Hey guys, and welcome to the Performance Hub podcast, and thanks for tuning in. So before we get started, we want to let you guys know about an amazing offer we have going at the moment. Using the coupon code COMMUNITY, we have 1 month free access to the Performance Hub. So this is our online members site where we have tons of content from in-depth exercise tutorials, videos on different strength and conditioning methods, program templates, articles on nutrition, stress management, and just a ton more content. So head over to www.pikeperformance.uk to sign up and get started on that today. As well as that, below this video, we've linked all our social media channels, as well as all of our guest socials. So go and like and comment and share, as it really helps us to be able to produce more content for you guys, like the interview that we have today. Okay, so that's enough of that. Let's dive into today's interview and see what it's all about. Afternoon guys, and welcome to the Performance Hub podcast. So today we have with us Chris Bundell, who's a strength and conditioning coach at SC Vital Fitness in Portsmouth. They're a group training facility, and they do an excellent job and probably be rated as one of the best small group training facilities in the country. Chris is one of the head coaches there, and lately he's been doing a lot of talks at other gyms, at his own gym, about the importance of sleep and everything about sleep. And you know, knowing that sleep is such an important subject in terms of recovery and performance, weight loss, general health, I really wanted to get him on here to kind of talk about what he knows and to try and help us further our knowledge around how to optimize our sleep and why that's going to be so important. So yeah, really excited to get in to talk to Chris a bit about where he's come from and his background and why sleep's so important. So let's get into it. Welcome to the Performance Hub podcast. It's great to have Chris Bundell with us from SC Vital Fitness, a small group personal training gym in Portsmouth. Look, Chris, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today, and then we'll dig into the subject matter of sleep today.
Yeah, okay. Well, first, thanks for having me on. I am a S&C coach. I'm a personal trainer as well as an S&C coach, but obviously they merge quite well together. My journey started in the army. So I was in the army straight out of school. I competed in anything that involved picking things up and sticking them back down again, or punching people, or lifting big objects as a team or whatever, anything involved in strength and power really. And I was doing quite well. I competed I had some powerlifting records back in the day.
Wow.
I ventured into strongman for a bit. I culminated in me competing at UK Strongest Man under 23, where I came second just to Adam Bishop, who's actually doing quite well these days.
Quite right.
I was beating it. My claim to fame is that I was beating him until the last event. I mean, I was all within his sights, but he was much better than me, and he far deserved it more than I did. But I got lucky on a few of the early events, and he hit me on the last one, which is cool. But and then the following year, I won UK Strongest Man under 105 kilos.
Amazing.
Unfortunately for me, that's where the journey ended. In a couple of months building up to that competition, I dislocated my knee. And it wasn't getting better, as I sort of just didn't really know what I was doing and tried to rehab it back to full strength. At which point I sought out someone that knew much more than I did. And I went to see Sean, who owns SC Vital Fitness in Portsmouth. And actually, a guest you've had on before was Dadner Reeve. He was there at the time. Yeah. And between the two of them, I quickly discovered that, you know, the knowledge I had was not enough for me to pursue, and I actually was a little bit annoyed at the lack of respect I'd paid to strength in general. So, you know, I opened my mind and just tried to learn. Essentially, I was just an open book to them, and I learned loads from them. Dan moved away, and as he moved away, I took on a role at the gym, and really, it's just been a whirlwind since then. Really, I studied uni. I studied sports science at uni, and part of my sort of dissertation at the end was writing a long piece of research, and mine was sort of like a bit of a meta-analysis, which is like a review of the literature on sleep. But mine was around for strength athletes. So yeah, that's where my sleep interest came from. And the reason I chose to go down that avenue was because I'm very much the person that can fall asleep in 2 minutes, no matter where I am, no matter what's going on, at the drop of a hat. I've got, like, my missus is the opposite. She takes her a while to get to sleep, and she's absolutely livid that I'm at one end of the spectrum and she's at the other. I remember one time we were in America, in Arizona, and it was baking hot. And I always proclaim that I don't do particularly well in the heat. And we were at this place where you slide down these slippery rocks.
Right.
And I went and did mine. And then she filmed me coming down and took loads of photos. And she went up and did hers. And we had to walk up this hill. And when she came down, I was asleep on a jagged rock. And it's just, I could sleep anywhere. I'm not sure if it's back from my army days, but I literally can sleep anywhere, anytime. And I just was a bit more curious, essentially, to that. And that's what sort of led me to go into sleep. So I did it, and then I started getting picked for information from friends, colleagues, and people that I trained. And quite quickly, I was in demand. Just too much for me to start doing individual things. So I thought, right, I'll put together a workshop and I'll take the hit in one go. So I did that, and it just went really well. I just was quite a success. So I tried again and bettered it, and then I've done a few more since. And yeah, just sort of keep reading the research, keep working with people, and that led to this, really, I suppose.
Yeah, amazing. So what is, in terms of training and recovery, sleep is obviously always touted as being very important. Nutrition is touted as being very important. Which one would you say is more important?
Honestly, and I'm not just saying this to be controversial, but I firmly believe that it is the most important. The reason being is it heavily influences everything else that you consider important. So, I'm sure we'll go into more detail later, but if you think about the pillars of performance, like you said, you talk about your training, you talk about your nutrition, and you talk about your lifestyle. Well, all those pillars are built on a foundation of sleep, essentially, because if you're not sleeping effectively or well, then all those three things that everyone deems that or argues that might be more important, essentially the effects of those are limited, or your capacity to approach them is. So I firmly believe that it is the most important. I can't remember what podcast I used to listen to. Not sure, but at the end of each one, they used to ask the person that was on there and said, if you could give one person one piece of advice in health and fitness, what would it be? And I can't remember how many of these podcasts I listened to. It must have been 30, 40. This is before I was really into sleep as well. And every single person, give or take one or two, said I'd get them to sleep better.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't the Bulletproof podcast with Dave Asprey, was it?
I've not listened to that one, so I doubt it. I can't remember which one it was. It's quite a while back. I tend to cycle podcasts. Like I won't do lots of different ones at once. I'll literally bulk listen to all of one, and then I'll ditch that and I'll go on to another one. So it could be quite old. I'm not even sure, but it was they just used to get guests on like we are now, and every single person just said I would just approach their sleep first. And actually it's a process I've taken where you've tried to make certain changes in areas, and it's not been effective. And actually it led me wondering, are we trying to patch over cracks when actually, the thing causing the cracks is this lack of sleep in the first place? I mostly had really positive results, to be fair. I'm not saying I've had negative results, but obviously not everyone buys into what you're putting out. But essentially, like anyone that's managed to make improvements has then made improvements in other areas. Because my goal is not necessarily to get people sleeping well, because people aren't really interested in that. But what they are interested in is actually, if they sleep better, everything else they do want becomes a lot easier.
So you said sleeping better, and you said kind of sleeping longer. If we're looking at, they're two separate things really, aren't they? I guess they're very related, but the length of sleep over the quality of sleep, which one's more important for you?
They're both important, to be fair. Chances are you're not really going to have one without the other too much. If you're getting lots of quantity, you probably make up for a slight lack of quality. If you're not getting the quality, if you are getting the quality, you can somewhat make up for the lack of quantity. But usually they're part and parcel together, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think what's what's important is just really to understand what they are. So the first thing to say, right, is this is optimal. So I'm not saying this is what everybody should be getting. Obviously, I'm well aware of that with a newborn in the last couple of weeks. That
how much have you been getting in the last few weeks?
I'm quite good actually. My missus is really good, and she knows what I'm like with my sleep. But I'm very much a morning person, so I'll get up at 5 and do uni work that time anyway. So she takes. I'll go to bed quite early, and she'll take she's a bit more of a late person, and she'll take the late shift, and then go to the early morning, wake me up, and then I'll tend to have them till late morning if I've got enough of the boob milk. And then if not, then I've got to wake her back up, unfortunately. But she's been really good. So I've been about 5-6 hours.
Okay.
But so we talk about the quality quantity, even though that's not what so the recommendations from most are a minimum of 7 hours. That's not to say anything less isn't good enough. It's just to say, very few people will be optimal on anything less than 7 hours. But like anything, you aim at the level where you are now. If you're currently only sleeping for 2, then let's get 3 first. Because I think I was going to talk about this later, really, because it's a bit of an area of mine that I'm quite passionate about. And there's a lot of people sort of give out sleep advice, and they're great coaches in certain areas. But when they give out sleep advice, it seems to be make sure you sleep 7 hours, and that doesn't quite work. That's like me saying, right, make sure you squat 100 kilo for 10 today. Yeah. Well, they might be on a 12 kilo kettlebell goblet squat now, so that's completely useless, and it sort of sets the boundary too high. And actually, sleep, like anything, even nutrition or training, it's behavioral change again. So it's something that needs to be coached, not told to and then executed. And that's I don't consider myself a sleep expert as such. Don't get me wrong. I've done some research in there, and I can understand the science of it, which allows me to make good judgment calls when it comes to helping others. But what I find that I am successful with is the application of it, and finding strategies to approach it, and delivering it at a level that actually becomes accessible for most, rather than sort of out of their reach, which is essentially what we're trying to do, right?
Yeah.
So we've digressed a little bit there, but so to go back to the question about quality and quantity, they're both important. So an optimal night's sleep would ideally be 7+ hours. It would be unbroken, so you wouldn't be waking up during the night.
No wake ups at all. Zero wake ups.
Optimal would be 0 wake ups. Most people do have the odd one. So like I said, if someone's currently waking up 6 times, then 4 is good for them. 3 is good for them. 2 is good for them. But if you can get it down to none, obviously that's much better. Everyone always says, I had a really good night's sleep last night. And when you speak to them, they didn't say they woke up. When they had a really good night's sleep, chances are, sorry, my dogs are barking. Chances are, if they had a really good night's sleep, it meant they slept from the time they went to bed to the time they woke up in the morning, really. So you should be waking up. And the other thing that's quite important that sometimes gets overlooked as well is, if you really want it to be optimal, it's got to be in line with sort of your circadian rhythm and what's known as your chronotype. So you get different types of people. So I alluded earlier that I'm a morning type person. So I actually much prefer to go to bed earlier in the night than most, and wake up a lot earlier. And for me, that gives me an optimal night's sleep. Whereas if you were to keep me up till 1 o'clock in the morning and then have me sleep till 9, I might be getting 8 hours sleep, but that's not really in line with what my body wants to do. So that makes it a little bit less optimal.
Okay. So how many chronotypes are there? Just earlier or later chronotypes? Or?
It's a spectrum. So you'll move from one to the other, essentially. But a lot of people confuse being a evening person with someone, and that what actually is they've got really poor sleep hygiene, and as such they're having to adapt to an evening one. And that is, if you're watching TV in bed, your body's not priming itself for sleep. So if you're staying up to 1 o'clock in the morning watching Netflix, I'm not a morning person. Well, maybe it's because you stayed up till 1 watching Netflix. So actually,
how would someone find out kind of what chronotype they were?
Yeah, so I mean, you can do testing, which isn't accessible. So there's no point even talking about that. But I would find for most, it's how I've gone about it is if you get a good night's sleep, um, you know, try and imagine how you feel throughout that day, and if you find you're quite productive in the mornings, that usually means you're a morning person. If you're productive later in the day, it usually means you're a later person, essentially. That's really like obtuse way of looking at it, but yeah, that's one way. And the other way as well is if you go and there's like pods in Norway where like you sleep under the stars in the light. That's dream like for feeling good, I imagine. But if you went and stayed in one of those void of all these things that influence whether or not you get a good night's sleep, you'd soon discover what your natural rhythm was, essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess as well, if you could get to a point where you had really good sleep hygiene and you weren't doing a lot of things that might have a negative impact, and you find that your lifestyle shifts you more towards staying up a bit later, getting up a bit later, or vice versa, you might deduce that was your kind of chronotype.
Yeah, sure, and yeah, definitely. And it all comes back to like with everything. Everything's quite individual, so it's a trial and error process. So make a note of how you felt when you did certain things, and essentially taking that was usually the best way to go. What you do need to consider as well, though, is it's all well and good saying, "No, I'm a night owl." Well, unfortunately, society's not really set up for night owls. So you might be a night owl, but actually, what you do need to do is find a middle ground, because sleeping until 10 is you're going to get fired quite quick unless you've got a late starting job. So it's not really going to work. So it's about what's applicable on an individual level as well.
Or you find a job that, like you say, fits around your sleep.
Yeah. if you're that dedicated to sleep, I want to work with you, because if you're willing to give up your job and get one that changes your sleep routine, that's brilliant. That's dedication.
Bringing that up in your interview.
yeah, definitely. And just going back to these sort of like your morning people and your night people, and actually how that actually affects your sort of body in regards to how it. So you've got different types of sleep. So you've got your deep sleep, which is your non-rapid eye movement sleep, and then you've got your rapid eye movement sleep, which is like your dreaming, essentially. And when you first go to sleep, that consists higher amounts of this deeper sleep, essentially. And as you get towards wake up time in the morning, it consists more of this dream sleep, essentially, which is why you might have your most vivid dreams just before you wake up in the morning. And if you're sleeping, and your body clock will almost dictate, like 10 o'clock when I'm going to get my deep sleep. So if you're this chronotype that likes to be in bed at 10, that's when you're going to get your best deep sleep, because you're aligning sort of when you are going to sleep with your body clock. And that actually is one of the ways that's going to influence the quality of your sleep as well, because actually you're sleeping at the right times that allows your body to sort of tap into the sleep that it needs to get, because your body's so clever, it will change your sleep around, essentially, depending on the needs of yourself.
So just so I understand it, so you're saying that your sleep stages are kind of fixed to, let's say, the rhythm
your
of
chronotype,
the day, rather than when you actually go to bed.
Not entirely, but somewhat, yeah.
Yeah, so that's interesting, because I would assume that, go on.
And that's why you end up with this. There's a term called social jet lag, which is where because have you ever noticed if you stay up really late but you still get your 8 hours, you're still tired?
Yeah.
And that's just because there's a misalignment there of what your body wants to do and the sleep it's actually got. So which is why 8 hours of sleep at a different time to what your body wants to sleep 8 hours is usually a whole lot less effective. Well, one of the reasons anyway.
This is interesting. So it's almost like our circadian rhythm essentially knows the time of day that it is, and it's almost like it's a separate entity from our being.
Yeah, there was some, I can't remember where I read it now, in a sleep book somewhere, but there was like some studies done like back when they didn't care about the people that did studies, and they kept them in dark rooms with no light, no time, no anything, and their bodies were actually developed a rhythm despite there was no influence on it, and that's because that's one way to find your type of person that you are, I suppose. But yeah, their body had this rhythm despite not having anything influencing it, and it just shows how strong this circadian rhythm that you naturally have within you is. And it does change over time. Obviously, when you're a little bit younger, it's you're more prone to lying in, and it does, as you get older, turn to a bit more of a morning type.
Well, guys, we are currently, a lot of us aren't working, so if you get some blackout blinds, and if you sit in your bedroom for maybe 3 or 4 days, you know, you can do it.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll be dealing with some unhappy people by the end of that, though.
Yeah. So okay, so I guess the lesson there is we don't really want to play around too much with the times we're going to bed, and the times we're kind of gravitating towards potentially are kind of set to some degree, and we need to listen to them rather than telling our body clock, you know, when we should, you know, when we're going to go to bed, and then just concentrating on getting enough sleep.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely a way to improve the quality and getting a more optimal sleep, definitely. But your body is very in tune. It's just a clever entity, the body, right? It fascinates me, and it's really clever in the sense that it will make changes to itself in order to promote the best thing. So everyone's got this old uncle that's 70 years old that got up at 6 o'clock every day because he's a plumber, and even now he doesn't set an alarm, but he wakes up at 5:59 every single morning without it, and that's because his body clock is so routinely, you know, timed that he doesn't even need, you know, it's that ingrained in him that he can just do it, and that's where routine's quite important.
And so is that a good example of how we can kind of train our rhythm, if you like, to kind
to a certain degree? Yeah.
Well, that would have been one of my questions. That is a phenomena that I've experienced, and I'm sure everyone's experienced if you've been in a very set routine, is waking up, looking at your alarm and thinking, oh, well, it's 5 minutes before I need to get up. And it seems like a coincidence, but obviously there's more going on than we realized.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's just get back to quality of sleep. So what is quality of sleep? Obviously, we've spoken about quantity and trying to fit in with our rhythms, but how do we get good sleep? Is it to do with the comfort of our bed, or like what actually qualifies, or how do we quantify it, if you like?
Quality of sleep is hard to quantify without a sleep lab, essentially. You know, you would be going off hooked up to machines, etc. Obviously, that's not accessible for most. A lot of people have watches and stuff that they use to track their sleep quality.
Yeah.
Take that with a pinch of salt. You know, a lot of them just track the movement of you. So, you know, if you move in your sleep, they're saying that's, you know, it's less of quality. Or if your partner moves in the bed, that might make less quality as well.
Can we see some correlation between movements and deep sleep stages?
Some, but it's not the only thing. But yeah, some. But you know, that's even then they're so sensitive to certain things that, you know, I wouldn't read too much into them. You can get much more out of, you know, I slept for 8 hours, pen and paper. I slept for 8 hours within my rhythm, and I woke up feeling really good. I'm just gonna move room just because the baby's just started crying.
I wonder what his sleep cycle is at the moment.
Yeah, he is definitely a waking up at every couple of hours type of.
That's good.
Chronotype.
Sounds healthy to me.
He's in my room, so I'm going to go into his room. Yeah. So yeah, where were we?
So
we were talking about the sleep cycles. So yeah, sleep quality essentially is it's getting the right amount of the cycles that your body needs, essentially. So like I said earlier, your body will almost change the architecture of your sleep. So if your body needs a certain amount of one type of sleep, it will slightly change towards different areas. So I suppose that's quality. And for me, the best way to go about it is, you know, did you wake up feeling really good? Did you do 7 hours in bed and woke up feeling awful? Or did you, and then felt groggy for the rest of the day? Or did you get 6 hours of sleep and wake up feeling really good? And that to me would indicate that the 6 hours are probably of a higher quality. But I think if people read too much into the quality thing. It is important, but
Yeah.
they worry too much about, you know, quantifying it and tracking it. Whereas merely if for me, if you're getting a good time in bed and you're following good sleep hygiene and some of the stuff we'll probably talk about later about getting better sleep, if you're doing all that, then I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you're doing those things already, then you've probably got other things that would be more benefit than trying to figure out the quality of certain sleep, essentially.
So why do you have these different sleep stages? What's their? I'm assuming they have some purpose.
Yeah, so your earlier type sleep is you're sort of you're almost like much more. It's a, how do I put it? So it's a deeper sleep essentially, and it's the optimal time for recovery essentially. So like your earlier cycles of sleep are deeper, and the deeper you get into sleep, you know, essentially the more optimal it is for physical recovery. So in your deep sleep, that's where pretty much most of your body's anabolic hormones are produced. You know, your growth hormone and the whole part of that of the endocrine system is regulated during that sleep, which is why that part's so important. If you're not getting that, then, you know, floppy cock soon, and you know, minimal recovery essentially. So that's why that one's so important. And then the non-REM sleep that's a little bit shallower later in the morning, that's super important for you know, creativity, sort of like more the cognitive side. I mean, it's not isolated, you know, one's cognitive and one's physical. They're both intertwined, but more so you know, physical recovery in the deeper sleep, and also loads of cognitive recovery goes on as well, but more so there's less of the deep physical sleep in the later cycles essentially.
So it's deep sleep's what we classify as non-REM, and then, or deep and light, and then REM is a like cognitive recovery.
Yeah, it's got a few. Is the connection right? Because it just cut out for me. Is it all right for you?
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the deep sleep has a few names. So it's deep sleep, non-REM. You've got stages 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then 4 would be a deep, or there's something called slow wave sleep, and all they sort of are just sort of slightly different names for the deep sleep. And then you've got your non-REM sleep, which is mostly what it gets. So that's that, and then you've got your REM sleep, which is which is what I would call just your dream sleep, because everyone understands it if you called your lighter dream sleep essentially.
Yeah. So if we don't use sleep tracking apps, and we assume that they're probably maybe not entirely accurate, are there other ways that we can tell maybe the next day or throughout the day whether we've done a good job of getting one, or whether we haven't got a certain sleep type? Can we kind of pick up on certain cues that might tell us about how well we've done with those different stages?
Levels of like sort of readiness and motivation, I would say, were quite big indicators. Obviously influenced by a few other things as well. Feeling essentially, I would encourage most people to get a grip of sort of understanding how their body feels.
Right.
I think, you know, that's the best thing people can do. The better people understand their body, the better they are able to make the changes. And I would say it's quite hard to just do it from one night. I would say, you know, do something for 3 or 4 weeks. You know, how did you feel after 3 or 4 weeks? A lot of people will try some of the sleep advice I give out for one day. Go, oh, I tried it, didn't do anything. Okay, well, you know, you've been doing the wrong thing, maybe. Well, not the wrong thing, but you've been doing non-optimal things for 7 years now. You know, I don't think one day is enough to kick the habit and produce all this wonderful stuff that will happen if you gave it some time. Yeah. I generally do think people get too much caught up in sort of like that, or the whole tracking side of things.
Okay.
You know, I generally feel like if you get a good night's sleep, you'll know about it. You know, you'll feel good. Then if you get 2 or 3 good nights sleep, come the 4th day, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel ready for something, unless you've got loads of other stuff going on. You're generally going to feel like you've had 2 or 3 good nights sleep. I can get my missus on in a minute, and we can talk about how she feels after not getting much over the last 2 weeks, and she'll definitely say the opposite.
It's very easy to notice when you don't have good sleep, I think, and maybe sometimes distractions of modern life and other factors may kind of make it harder to notice when we do get good night's sleep. But
Yeah, definitely.
the opposite would definitely be true. You mentioned about circadian rhythms. I just wanted to come back to that a little bit. Something I'd heard, and this might be one of those stats that kind of has been widely spread but isn't very accurate, is circadian rhythms following like a set kind of amount of time. So I had this stat of 45 minutes or an hour and a half being like an amount of time that we'd need to get through a circadian rhythm, if you like. And we might have a few of those while we sleep. Is that something that's backed up in the science? Or?
Yeah. So your circadian rhythms is approximately 24 hours long. Your sleep cycles, however, are anywhere between 90 minutes and 2 hours.
Right. Okay.
So there was a book that came out not so long ago by a guy who knows much more about sleep than I do, called Nick Littlehales, and he was the first guy to be hired to work with Manchester United and deal with the sleep of the players. And one of the premises of his book is that you don't sleep for a certain amount of time, you sleep for cycles. So, you wouldn't sleep for 6 hours, you would sleep for 4 90-minute cycles.
Right. Okay.
But the logic behind that is it's an easier way to track when you've got a lot of commitments like sports players do. So they can grab one cycle in the afternoon if they're missing it. And that's how they track it. And they'll say, right, you've got to get 30 cycles per week or whatever the arbitrary number is. And the rationale behind that is if you were to wake up at the back end of a cycle, so in each cycle, imagine this is, I'm trying to get my hand on the camera. Imagine as you have each cycle, you go deep and then you come back out again, deep and you come back out again, gradually getting less deep as the cycles go on. Okay. So at the end of a cycle, essentially, you're in a very light stage of sleep. So if you can wake up at the end of that cycle, then it's likely you would feel a little bit better upon waking. So if you've ever had a nap about an hour long in the afternoon, chances are you've woken up in the middle of a sleep cycle and you've gone into quite a deep stage of sleep, which is why if you then wake up at that point, you tend to have a bit of grogginess about you, and that's called sleep inertia, where your body's still not quite out of that deep stage of sleep, essentially.
So if we nap in the day, should we always be aiming for kind of 90 minutes to 2 hours to try and get a full cycle?
Yeah, that's one option. That's cool. If you've got the time to do that, then I wouldn't discourage that. Just be prepared that if you nap every day at a certain time, your body will get quite used to it, and all of a sudden you'll be wanting to nap when when you shouldn't be napping. You'll be wanting to nap at that time on a different day. So yeah, you can do that, the 90 minutes to 2 hours, because you'll be coming out the end of a cycle. Another option is it's recommended you take a 20-minute nap, because actually what happens there is you'll get some sleep, but it'll be before you drop into the deep sleep. Okay. So you wake up after 20 minutes having a little bit less of the sleep inertia, because you're only at a lighter stage of sleep. Obviously, then you're not getting as much of the deeper sleep in the afternoon.
So what would be the benefit of having like a 20-minute nap if we're not going to get down into those deeper or REM kind of, or will we be in REM sleep at that point?
No, you would be in light non-REM. Probably. I mean, everybody's different, but it's likely you would be in a light stage of non-REM, like a stage 1. And you do get physical and mental recovery benefits from being in that stage. So yeah, there would be benefit to that. I mean, don't get me wrong as well. Your body is just so clever. I can't remember whose book it was. I've done this. I've got the baby brain. But there was a book of a woman who was running. It was like a race from point A to point B, and it was get there, on foot, go. No, like, oh, we'll stop at 9 and sleep overnight and then go. It was just get from point A to point B, run as much as you like, rest as much as you like, but it's a race. And she fell and she stopped, and she had a guide with her that alternated with sleep, because she was the only one that didn't get the sleep. And she'd been running for days on end, and she stopped and fell asleep for what felt like hours. But when she was woken up, it turned out it was sort of seconds. She'd been asleep for seconds. And it just shows how, she was in so dire need of sleep that, like, when she did go to sleep, she's probably overwhelmed by her body telling her, like, go, we need this, we need this. And what wasn't a particularly long period was probably enough to make a big difference to her on that race. Can't remember who it was now. I should research this before I come on these and chat. But yeah, essentially, if you're only getting 20 minutes, your body will do something to make sure that's a useful 20 minutes.
Yeah. So, okay, so small naps, great. Longer naps, maybe even better. Quantity
Yeah.
is important, but maybe even if we're having slightly less, if we get good quality, it's still going to be good.
It's kind of like a top up, you know. So if you're maybe not hitting your quantity in the night time, then yeah, you're probably gonna. It's an option to top it up in the afternoon, essentially. I say the afternoon because there's two optimal times to have a nap, and that's sort of again it shifts slightly depending on again your chronotype. So I'm a morning person, so my times come slightly earlier. But for most people, it's around 2 to 4 p.m. and then again from 5 to 7, because you have two slight dips in your circadian rhythm. So what you'll notice actually is, you know, if you work 9 to 5 on a day, you tend to dip in energy about 3 o'clock. And that's one of your dips in circadian rhythm, because if you have a dip in your circadian rhythm, it's a little bit of a dip, a little bit of a drop off in your alertness. So that's why sort of there's a lapse in concentration in the afternoon, and it's a good time to have a nap.
So so when I was a nurse, in my last job as a nurse, I only worked part-time. I worked on Thursday at a local hospital, and their cafeteria did what I would say is the best roast dinner in Portsmouth. So that's a little tip for everyone. Go to St Mary's Hospital on a Thursday. They literally do the best roast dinner in Portsmouth. It's about £4.50. So I go down, fill up my plate. I train really hard that night as well, so I can justify eating my really big dinner because it was fuel for my hard training session. And then after that, I would have a big dip, like hard to keep my eyes open, you know, and that probably was around 2-3 o'clock. And I always thought it was maybe digesting the food, the carbohydrates I'd eaten, like, you know, making me a bit sleepy. I've definitely had lots of people kind of saying the same kind of things, but maybe that's not the case.
A combination of the two, likely. Yeah, so if you eat a high carb meal, there's usually a drop off, and there's usually a little bit of a drowsiness part that comes off after it. But yeah, definitely the afternoon thing would have played a factor as well. So when you combine the two, you probably I'd have been napping in the utility room, definitely.
It was good. But
yeah.
so maybe with that in mind, if we're having that dip between 2 and 4, not good times to train.
So yeah, we're going quite deep here. But circadian rhythm's been shown actually to have an influence on performance. So you peak in different types of performance at different times of the day. Now, my area that I mostly look into is strength. And for most, you would peak at strength in the late afternoon, so around the 5 o'clock mark. It depends on how many hours you've been awake for. You know, if you got up at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's probably looking a bit late to be training in the evening. But if you got up at normal time, sort of like your 6, 7, 8, yeah, your strength would peak in the late evening, which is why which is why you sometimes see an increase in performance in that time compared to other times. However, like I said, your body's so clever. If you train at 2 o'clock every single day, your body will soon start to get used to training at 2 o'clock every single day as well. So
yeah, and is that just is the circadian rhythm kind of impacting on the release of certain hormones, cortisol, testosterone, things like that around that time?
Honestly, don't know. I've not delved into it too much. I think it's a little bit too along the lines of going down an angle and controlling an angle that doesn't really need to be controlled.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I'm very much a try and keep it simple kind of person. You know, let's deal with the big rocks and work on those. Yeah, I imagine it's alertness more so than anything else. But also just a lack of fatigue. It's probably just going off an educated assumption. It would be your alertness has increased as long throughout the day, and it's before probably before your sleep pressure gets too high that you've been awake for so long. Because that's the other thing that influences your sleep. It's called your sleep pressure. So every time you're awake and every time you move, your body releases a chemical that goes straight to your brain and called adenosine, and this adenosine builds up. And when enough of it builds up, the sleep pressure gets high, and it says, "Let's go to sleep." So, which is why if you wake up really early, even though your circadian rhythms working the same, but because you woke up really early, the sleep pressure is higher than it normally would be, and that's why you would be more tired in the evening than you usually would, essentially. So there's two things that influence your knack of going to sleep, and that would be how much sleep pressure you've got. If sleep pressure is high, and it would be influenced as well by your circadian rhythm.
Yeah. Okay, that's really interesting. Can you have too much sleep?
I would argue there becomes a drop off in benefit and cost. So, like for most people, it's between 7 to 9 hours is optimal. I would say if you're doing a lot of physical work or emotional stress, really need to recover from something, it's at the higher ends. So an athlete who's training 3-4 times a day with family stresses as well is, they're going to be 9+. So take that into consideration. But for most, between 7 and 9 is optimal. Once you get past that, you're probably not going to be going into much deep sleep. And then it becomes a point of, it's not harmful, I suppose, but maybe it is harmful because there's other stuff you could be doing with that time.
The life harmful to your kind of productivity and things like that.
Definitely, yeah.
So look, we've spoken a lot about the ins and outs of sleep, but why is it so important? What impact does it have on our kind of health? And let's look at health first off. What are some of the health negative impacts?
Okay. I mean, again, so I'm not claiming to be a doctor by any means. My main area of sleep is improving performance in strength and power sports. But it all coincides together. So so a lot of the stuff we mentioned, for one thing, now we talk about health, strength, muscle growth, body composition. One thing's not going to be isolated to just improving health. It's going to be tied across the board. So we mentioned hormones earlier. So having a favorable hormone profile, obviously is beneficial to health. So getting that's important. Obviously, the less anabolic hormones you have, the more catabolic you're going to be in. And without going into someone else's area now, but obviously being in a catabolic state all the time is not particularly conducive. It's been linked, not as a proven cause of diseases, but a link between God knows how much, you name it, it's been linked with it. So diabetes, obesity, stroke, hypertension, heart disease, Alzheimer's, cancer, it's all been shown to have a huge influence. And not just all those as well, just going to like your common cold. So poor sleep or not enough sleep is going to suppress your immune system. And as a result, you're going to be more susceptible to just basic illnesses. It's going to, if you're injured, it's going to take longer to recover. And actually think, if you think about like the big things in life, actually, if you're tired, you're less focused, you're less concentrating. So actually, more chance of having a car accident.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people die in car accidents, get seriously hurt in car accidents. So sleep's important because it's been shown to help your driving ability. Anything along those, and that's just physical. You can talk about emotional well-being. How much better is everything after a bit of sleep? You go to bed in a state, wake up in the morning, oh, actually that wasn't that bad, I can sort that out. Emotional well-being, relationships, everyone says, like, when you're tired you argue. So it's put strains in your relationships, your emotional health. I mean, I've reeled off loads there. We could talk about this for hours. Essentially it plays a factor in all of those without being specifically linked, but it plays a contributing factor, and that's why it's so important. And that's why I'm so passionate about sleep, is because you can name anything and you could talk about how sleep affects it, anything. And sleep has an influence on it, maybe not directly, but indirectly it influences it. And that's why I'm so passionate about helping people just get better sleep than what they're currently getting.
And another one is and this is one of the things when you try and help people lose weight, one of the factors that is probably easily missed in why isn't someone losing weight can often be someone's poor quality or quantity of sleep. Do you want to talk a little
Oh,
bit about
definitely.
how that might impact on someone's weight loss journey?
Yeah. So to put it bluntly, when you're tired, you eat more and you eat more shit. Um, you know, you tell me one time you've been tired and you've not been just looking for the biscuit tin. You're just looking for them carbs, aren't you? You're looking for the high calorie stuff, and it's common sense. You're tired. Your hormones. So you've got two different. Well, you've got loads of different hormones. Two hormones I'll name. You've got your leptin and your ghrelin, which is your hungry and your full hormone. And if you're tired, it's been proven that you have an increase in your hungry hormone. So now you're hungry. So you eat more, and people don't. When you're tired, you don't go, oh, where's the broccoli at? Give me some broccoli. It's it's where's the Kit Kats. So you're hungrier, you eat more, and you eat more shit. And that's real, like, simple. And what are the problems with people losing weight? Essentially, if you break it down, so what is the science of why people can't lose weight? It's because they're eating too many calories, and they're usually not the right calories. And I've just mentioned it there. If you're hungry, you eat more calories, and those calories tend to consist of high, low nutrient dense, high but low nutrient but dense calories, because you're looking for fast energy essentially. And there was a really interesting study as well that proved as well that even if you are able, and because some people have that real good motivation, and even if they're tired, they're not going to eat shit, they're going to eat less, they're going to stick to their diet. Well, actually, if you're sleeping under, I think it was 6 hours, it's been proven that actually it's much more likely that if you were to lose weight, it would come from muscle mass rather than fat. So even if you are and you really motivated, you're able to maintain that diet plan that you were following. Essentially, it's probably in vain anyway, because a lot of that's going to come from muscle. So while you might get weight loss, I'm sure losing muscle and retaining fat wasn't what people were actually after. And the next one that's really important to consider as well is it's not only just the eating, it's not the over excessive calories and the type of calories that people are eating. It's also quite often a lack of exercise or the calories they're putting out. And the main way that sort of lack of sleep influences that, or good sleep influences, positively influences it, is if you're sleep deprived, you perceive everything to be harder. So like just things that shouldn't be a challenge are a little bit harder. But most importantly, you think you're working harder than you are. So for instance, say you go out on a bit of a walk and you're trying to shift some calories, you feel like you burnt more calories and worked harder than you actually have. And that links quite nicely from weight loss into performance. It's the main influencer on performance as well, because sleep's been mostly linked to affecting endurance performance, and it's mostly because you think you are doing and putting more effort in than you actually are.
I guess in endurance as well, that the numbers are harder to see straight away. So what I mean by that is if you run a 10-mile race, I guess you can keep an eye on your pace if you've got some sort of device that's monitoring it, but it's more subjective, isn't it? Unless you've got those numbers in front of you. Whereas when you're lifting a weight, you either can lift it or you can't lift it. It either feels heavy on that day or it doesn't feel heavy.
Oh yeah.
It's harder to come alive, isn't it?
I looked a lot at the effects of sleep deprivation on strength as well. And acutely, strength's not actually been shown to have a massive or significant effect. So one night's poor sleep isn't necessarily going to affect strength performance on that one day.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's where a lot of the research tends to stop. But this is where common sense kind of prevails. And that is, chronic sleep deprivation is massively different to acute to a single night. So we talked about, the production of anabolic hormones. Well, everybody knows anabolic hormones make you big, strong, and fast. If they didn't, then people wouldn't take them in strength, power, and speed sports.
Yeah.
So obviously, if they're that effective, that they influence massively, and they all come during this deep sleep. So if you're cutting your sleep short or it's of poor quality, then those hormones aren't going to be around. or they're not going to be around in the same numbers, and as such, over time, your strength will be affected. Definitely, even though I'm not aware of research that prove that fact. I think you only have to look at the research that is out there and piece it together to come to that conclusion. For me, that's common sense. And the other thing you've got to consider as well is, even those strength sports involving weightlifting and 1 rep max testing or power sports, they are often, or especially if they're max power, they're one repetition, and that's not long enough really to see this drop off in perceived effort. But training's never this one it's much longer. It's uses a lot of the different energy systems as well. So actually the perceived exertion of a training session now is going to affect it, because actually, while it might not knock kilos off your 1 rep max that day, actually the bulk of what you did in that session, I would argue, is probably going to be less, or at least with less intensity.
Yeah, and if your work capacity is affected negatively, and every session you're going into, you're working at 70% of what you could potentially work at, you're going into a competition with a 30% deficit. You're not going to be as strong as you could have been, because the volume's just not going to be there.
No, and unfortunately, and this is the thing with chronic deprivation as well, is people often don't even recognize it. They're so used to getting 5 hours of average quality sleep that actually they don't even know what it's like to feel after getting 2 weeks of 8 hours. And unfortunately, that's the situation we're in.
How could you is there, I know you said you weren't a huge fan of tracking data, but is there some data that people could track to show that look, you say your sleep's good, but actually what this is saying is it's not that great?
I would argue that, I mean, I would look at the numerous amount of research out there that suggests 7 hours is minimum. If that's not enough, national sleep foundations and councils all saying the same thing, you should be getting 7 hours. NHS saying the same thing. If that's not enough to make someone think that 7 hours is enough, then I would argue you would need more than just more data to show it. You're fighting a battle there. For me, for that person, I would do my best to encourage them to make some sort of change. And if they could make a change, I think you could show the difference between what was happening before and what's happening now. Yeah. So like the same way you could in a training program, well, you were moving, whether you use velocity, for instance, you were moving this at this speed, and the only thing we've changed is your sleep, and now it's moving at this speed. So something along those lines, essentially. But again, not everybody's ready for change. Yeah. A lot of the people that I say, you've got to help my mate out, they don't sleep particularly well. Okay, well, unless they're willing to make a change and ready to do that, then it doesn't matter. You can show them as much data in the world. It doesn't need to. And then it comes down to the strategies, where actually this is where the application is so effective, is you have to find the things that people don't mind doing. If I can find one thing that's going to make a huge difference in their sleep that they don't mind doing, then, well, I get that you're not really interested. You think you feel great, but, would you mind trying this out? Oh yeah, it doesn't bother me. Okay, well, you try that, and then let's look at the difference, how you feel. And the amount of people, so we'll talk about it later, the caffeine, but the amount of people I've convinced or just persuaded just to try it, and actually after a week, 2 weeks, they said, oh my God, I cannot believe the difference.
Yeah. I think
I've used that data.
Problems with sleep is you have outliers. Like two people that on the top of my head, Maggie Thatcher, who said, I think she said she slept for like 2 or 3 hours every night. And Joe DeFranco, funnily enough, always says that he only sleeps for kind of 2 or 3, 4 hours a night. And obviously he's like an elite level strength and conditioning coach who is pretty strong. I assume, he's got a pretty decent amount of muscle mass, etc. How do these people cope with just year upon year of just lack of sleep?
So I would throw two things back at those statements, and number one would be, outliers appear in anything. So
Yeah.
how many people have made good progress in sport without S&C?
Sure.
People have said, I didn't do any. Okay, well, one, they're an outlier, and how do we know they couldn't have been better had they done it?
Yeah.
And you don't know. So maybe Joe DeFranco could have been even better had he nailed his sleep. We don't know. So that would be my first thing. The second thing as well is everyone who's sort of interested in sleep, and it's been quite a hot topic recently off the back of Matthew Walker's book, which was Why We Sleep. And I can't remember the exact numbers or the quote, but there was some research done, and it identified a gene marker that enabled people to perform optimally on less than 6 hours sleep. It might have been 5 or 6 hours sleep, and it identified the gene marker, and then they tested a large amount of people for this gene marker. And out of the people they tested, I think it was like 0.001% of people had this gene marker. Yet 40% of the people claimed they worked just fine on less than five hours.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is what we said earlier, is actually, they've just been doing it for so long that they don't know any different.
Yeah. It's just
it's just their level of normal. Their body's got so used to it that they've become somewhat accustomed to it, but it doesn't mean it's the best thing for them. It just means you got used to it over time.
So you mentioned caffeine. Let's look at a couple of things that kind of commonly we hear affect our sleep in a negative way, and then we'll go on and kind of look at what we can do to improve our sleep. What's the deal with caffeine? What's your kind of advice, and why is that negatively affecting our sleep?
So caffeine is probably the one that I deal most with, because it's in 90% of the sleep consults I have. Caffeine is usually the culprit of poor sleep. Well, one of a few, and it always starts at the same. I'm not drinking any caffeine. Okay, let's talk about it. I don't drink coffee. Okay, I know you're drinking coffee. No, I don't drink any caffeine. And then you keep talking, and then you find out they're drinking green tea, which has got caffeine in it, or Pepsi Max, or Lucozade Energy. They're drinking something that's got caffeine in it. And I made the mistake when I first started out of going, let's go down these other avenues and look at all these things. And then I'm banging my head against the wall saying, why am I not able to help this person? And then I'm like, right, do me a food diary. And then it's like a can of Pepsi Max with dinner. And I'm like, oh my God, we just spent weeks trying to sort this out. And it was the caffeine again. So now I generally won't work with anyone personally that won't change their caffeine habits. It's that important. I'll explain a little bit of that science. So I mentioned earlier about your brain being receptive to a chemical called adenosine.
Yep.
Which is the buildup of sleep pressure. And what caffeine does is it blocks these receptors. So the adenosine builds up, goes to the receptors, but the receptors are temporarily blocked by the caffeine. So the adenosine still builds up, but your body's just not sensing it. It becomes oblivious to it. And after time, eventually the caffeine breaks down, and then all this adenosine that's built up then floods the receptors, which is why you get that caffeine crash.
Right.
So there's that. And then the argument I met with every time is, I drink so much coffee, it doesn't even have an effect on me. And that's something I have to deal with regularly. And I used to be one of those, because I used to be able to have double espresso before bed, sleep, and I thought I slept just fine. However, what actually happens is your body can become accustomed to caffeine. However, you've got different types of receptors in your brain, and the adenosine and the receptors and the adenosine receptors, there's two different types, and one becomes accustomed to the caffeine and doesn't sort of let it bother it anymore, and that is the one that's sort of where you lose your buzz, essentially. So eventually, when you drink much coffee, you no longer get that buzz, like that tingly thing. If you've been camping for a week, you've not had any coffee, then all of a sudden you drink one, you get that buzz. Well, that goes if you consistently drink coffee. However, you cannot be accustomed, and you cannot acclimatize to the effect of caffeine on sleep. It's a different type of receptor that doesn't become accustomed to the caffeine. So it 100% does. And then you get met with the same people that say the same thing I said, which is I can have a coffee before bed and I still sleep. That might be the case. However, if you think now that your sleep pressure is no longer as high because you're full of this caffeine blocking these adenosine receptors, then essentially what's going to happen is your body's not going to be set well. The pressure to sleep's not as much. So actually, it's going to affect the quality of your sleep now, rather than just affecting your ability to go to sleep. And quite often, this materializes in wake-ups later on in the night. So people are drinking coffee in bed or tea in bed, and actually how it materializes, they're still able to go to sleep, but they feel they're getting just as good as quality sleep as anyone else, but actually it's not as deep. And what's happening is they're usually waking up after cycle 1 or cycle 2, 3 hours into the night, and they can't get back to sleep. But because it's too far away from when they consume their caffeine, they're not putting 2 and 2 together. Now, the solution for that, so caffeine's negatively affecting sleep essentially. So the solution for that is to reduce the caffeine intake. If you're drinking 10 cups of coffee in the evening, then cut it down to 5, and that's a good start. However, I personally don't believe there is a cost of giving up caffeine. I've yet to find it. The reason for that is everyone says, "Oh, decaf tastes awful." Well, in my opinion, if decaf tastes awful, it's because you're buying a low quality decaf. You drink Yorkshire tea, but then you're buying Tesco value decaf. I've never had anyone that's been able to taste the difference. So I secretly swap decaf in people's tea bags. The people that I have this argument with, they say, "Oh, decaf tastes rubbish, I'm not doing it." I regularly just swap tea bags, and they've never known. My grandpa, for instance, he used to say to me, "I need you to help with my sleep. I'm not sleeping." And he's quite not ready for change. And one thing I suggested was the caffeine. He was like, "No, I don't do it. It tastes rubbish." Well, his health deteriorated, and I ended up doing his shopping for him. So guess what I did? I swapped his decaf over, and this continued for weeks. And he none the wiser whatsoever. And his health actually improved so much that he was able to go do his own. I'm not saying just down to the sleep. Obviously, his health improved anyway. But his health improved. And he started, and he said to me, "I don't need you to help on sleep anymore. I've just sorted myself out." And the only thing that had changed, without him knowing it, was the decaf. Anyway, when his health improved, he started doing his own shopping again, refused to buy the decaf, and now he can't sleep again. It's tough, but and it's just this readiness to change essentially. But I won't usually consult with anybody that's not prepared to give caffeine, because there's really, you can sort out all this other stuff, but if they're still drinking caffeine in the afternoon and evenings, then everything else you do is going to have minimal effect. And quite frankly, if they're not willing to give up decaf, then if they're not willing to give up caffeine and go to decaf, they're not really invested in what you're trying to achieve anyway.
What about, how is the half-life of caffeine? About 12 hours, is that right?
It's not quite that long. It ranges, again, everything's individual. I've read anywhere between 2 and 9. But then don't forget, that's just half-life. So, only half's it in that time. It's still in the system. A double espresso in 4 o'clock, if you're a 7-hour half time, it's only halved at 11 o'clock. And then another 7 hours from that, it's only halved once more. It's still in your system late in the night. So
even if you had I'm just trying to justify my own caffeine use, but even if you had like a double espresso or an espresso flat white, whatever, in the morning, let's say 8 o'clock, there's still going to be some caffeine circulating around in your system by the time you go to bed at, say, 10.
I would argue, I drink coffee until midday.
That's what I was trying to do.
I would say, unless you're having real trouble sleeping, then I wouldn't look to cut caffeine out completely. And like I said earlier, I can keep moving back to, but your body's so clever, it adapts to what you're doing. And I'm not talking about getting used to the caffeine on your sleep, but actually, if you're alert in the mornings because you're having a coffee at 7 o'clock every day, your body's kind of going to get used to a little bit to being alert at those times. So actually, it can be used as a sort of way to, as a part of being alert in a routine. So it can actually help you as well, which is why it's a bit of an aid at the same time. So my tip would be just to cut the caffeine out in the afternoons from lunchtime. And I've yet to have anyone that's done it and it not make a massive difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. And if you are a coffee enthusiast, there are some excellent decaf coffees. I've got one at the moment from a company called Girls Who Grind, and you can't taste the difference. It's absolutely lovely to have an afternoon coffee, and you almost get like a placebo pick me up because you're just so used to getting that pick me up, but obviously without too much effect in terms of the caffeine content.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just buy a decent quality decaf and you won't notice the difference.
So what about screen usage? This is a bit the buzzword at the moment, blue light from screens and screen usage effects.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Yeah, so if it's not caffeine, the second most common issue, it tends to be screen exposure. So essentially, your circadian rhythm takes cues from the outside. So where there's sound, so your body's designed to sleep at night because it's cool, it's dark, and it's quiet. So ideally, that should be replicated in your sleep conditions. So every time, so if you think now that screen has like a spectrum of light called your blue light that replicates natural sunlight, and what actually happens is it goes in your eyes and is essentially saying to your body, it's not sleep time, it's still light. That's a real crude way of putting it, but essentially that's what it's doing. So yeah, light exposure, it just has an issue. If you're on a screen as well, chances are you're on social media, which is stimulating you, or you're playing a game. I think it's the worst thing people can do. It's stimulating you in when you're trying to go to sleep, essentially. At a time you should be shutting down, you're shining, it's the equivalent of shining sun in your eyes and perking yourself up a bit. So obviously not conducive to a good night's sleep. And I always try and put it in a way that people can relate to, and that is, everyone knows how much easier it is to wake up in the morning when it's light outside to compare to when it's dark. The same as it's very hard to sleep in the evenings when it's light compared to when the winter tend to drift off much earlier when it's dark outside, because your body takes such an influence from the light. Yeah. So if you can relate to that, then it should be quite easy to understand actually if you have this replicated light from a device shining straight on you, then obviously it's going to have an effect as well. That being said, I am a huge fan of light exposure as a promoter of sleep. So at the right times, light exposure can improve sleep. So if you can get outside in the early morning and be exposed to light, or if you're exposed to light throughout the day, you'll find you'll sleep much better.
Okay, so let's just play devil's advocate. If someone couldn't get outside, for whatever reason they can't get much light exposure over the day, would they be able to use the phone as a light promoting aid in the mornings to increase that? Or
in theory, yes, and there's much better ways of doing that. So just getting outside in the fresh air is an active as well, is a big part of it. It's not just the light. But yeah, in theory, which is why a lot of people, there's big market for these sad lamps, that replicate the light that people use in the morning. I've got one. There's actually earphones that you put in your ear, and it shines the blue light in your ear. And it's used to prevent. It was developed in America not America. I think it's used mostly in America by football teams that travel cross country and have a different shift in the time, essentially. So I use that in winter because I no longer work outside doing what I do. I'm now indoor. I've always been outdoors before I started this career. So over the last 5 years, I've had to adapt to being indoors. And one of the ways I do that is in winter. I actually I have that light in my ears, or I'll use a sad lamp on the way to work, before I go to work or on the way to work.
And so the benefit is of that, it's actually going to help you sleep later in the night because it kind of stimulates you.
Yeah, so I've read some research that suggested that what it does is it limits the effects of light exposure later in the day. So it's very hard in modern culture to disassociate from all light before bedtime.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be something having an effect. But if you can be exposed to light earlier in the morning, it limits the effects of blue light later, before bed, essentially.
Yeah.
So that's one. And the other thing it does as well is that almost it strengthens your circadian rhythm to be awake at that time of morning.
Okay.
So, if you can strengthen if you can have a strong circadian rhythm due to routine and all this effective sleep hygiene, you have these, asleep, awake, rather than it's being a very blurred sort of, oh, which one am I? Am I asleep or awake? And inducing a constant state of neither.
That's super interesting. So is it the blue light? Because again, this is something that I've seen people kind of debating one or the other. Most phones have got like a blue light filter on them. Some people use blue light filter glasses or screen covers. Is it the blue light specifically in a phone? If we can dim that down, is that going to help, or is it just the light from the phone?
It's the blue light in particular. However, the filter alone is not enough. So the night mode on phones, etc., it does help, and it's what I use. However, it's not enough. It's not a complete way of doing it. What is a more effective way is to put the filter on and turn the brightness right down if you have to use it. For instance, we're talking about applicable now rather than optimal. So you have to use your phone or whatever. Then putting the brightness all the way down and putting the filter on is much more effective. These are actually blue light glasses, are they? Oh no, these aren't my blue light ones. These are my blue light ones. Look exactly the same. But they have a slight coating on them. You see it there when I'm moving the light. It blocks some of the light out. Again, these aren't 100% effective. The ones that are almost 100% effective are the orange ones.
I've seen those,
Which I personally would wear myself, because I've been engaged to my missus. We have a kid now. I feel like I can let my standards slip a little bit, and I would wear my big orange glasses in order to block the blue light. The only reason I don't is because where I wear prescription glasses, they're very, very expensive. If I didn't have a prescription, they're only sort of 20, 30 quid, whereas these other ones are like 200 quid and plus.
So would you just wear them at night to help? Like in the evening, if you like?
Yeah, I would only wear them in the evening because, like I said earlier, light exposure in the morning is not necessarily a bad thing. If anything, it's positive. So if you were to wear them in the morning, that's why I haven't got these ones on now, is because in the morning I want the light. I want to be alert. Like I said, I'm a morning person. I do all my work in the morning. This is getting quite late for me, to be fair. Well, at least to work anyway. I am. I don't wear my blue light in the morning because I actually want to be. I want my body to respond to the fact that I'm taking all these cues to be awake, because I do want to be awake.
Yeah. Okay. So let's look at how we can improve sleep then. Like, we've touched on a few things, but what would be your kind of big hitters that you would get people doing?
Yeah, caffeine. Giving up caffeine after midday is probably the most effective thing you can do. If you're not doing that, I would just switch this podcast off now, because that is, if you're not doing that, that is the thing you should try first. It's got the least cost, in my opinion. It's not going to mess up your lifestyle or anything like that. Give that a try if you haven't, and I promise you'll notice a difference. Like I said, the big issue here is behavioural change. So the best thing you can do is the ones that you're going to be able to keep doing. Like anything, the best diet is the one you can stick to. The best training program is the one you can stick to. So if any of these things I'm saying sound absolutely horrendous, then they're not for you. Everything's individual. Pick the one you think, do you know what? I could give that a go. So caffeine is the first one. So reducing your caffeine intake. The other thing you can do is reduce alcohol intake. Without going into it, even longer now, alcohol affects your sleep as well. People think it doesn't, but you sleep lighter. Your body becomes more sensitive to light that day. So you're essentially, your body will be sensing any light it gets to give you a bad night's sleep. You'll wake up loads of times without realizing it, because your body's processing the ethanol. Ethanol is ethanol. The alcohol, or whatever the molecule is that comes out of it. And then for the next couple of days, you're less responsive to light, so you don't become as alert in the daytime either. So getting rid of alcohol is probably number 2. Number 3 would be light. Well, I count the first one as the same one, like no caffeine or alcohol. That's the first thing people should try, or at least having less. Number two would be light exposure, which we've already talked about. And that's the reason I put that second is because it's quite common. A lot of people sit on their phones in bed, and ideally they can get into the habit of brushing your teeth, leaving it outside. Just leave it in a different room, get an alarm clock rather than using your phone, and it should make a big difference. The next one I've put in there because it's important, but it's just something you do rather than a habit. So it's your environment. So the environment you sleep in should be cool, dark, and quiet. So you've only got to buy a comfy set of sheets once, and then it's done. Well, you've got to wash them, obviously. So buy a comfy set of sheets, but your bed should be comfy. That's pretty much the only guidelines, really. Get a comfy bed that allows you to sleep. The curtains should be, if you're struggling getting to sleep, then the curtains need to be thick enough to block out light, enough that it's not influencing you. The room should be cool as well, so it shouldn't be, you don't want the heating on. It should be, I think it's 16 to 18 degrees, I think is ideal.
Okay.
So yeah, it should be around that mark. And anything else is probably not ideal. So cracking a window, it should also be quiet. So if you live on a quiet street, that's quite nice. You can open your windows and you won't get too much noise. But if you live on a road, obviously that you can't crack a window to let the cool in. So cracking a window would end up creating loads of noise. So something like sleeping in a different room at the back of the house might be an option, or putting some earphones in, some earplugs in would help. It could be a noise machine. I quite like I listen to like sort of ambient noise.
Yeah.
So that's quite a good one, because actually the cost of that is, it's not a continual thing. It tends to be, you buy a comfy eye mask once, and you buy a comfy set of sheets or a pair of blackout blinds, and it tends to make a big difference. The next one is your routine. So, yeah, sorry, I took my headphone out and it pauses. So is your routine. So like I said, your body will adapt to whatever you're doing. So try and get into a routine. If you can wake up the same time on the weekend as you do on the weekdays, all of a sudden it'll get much easier to wake up that time during the week. So if you wake up at 7:30 for work during the week, do that again on the weekends, and all of a sudden your body will just get so much better at doing that. It will get better at going to sleep on time in the evenings, because it knows what time it wants to be awake in the mornings, and it just allows it to have the best chance to do its magical work and change like what's going on inside your body to give you the best quality and quantity sleep possible.
So sleeping at the weekends might be a false economy then?
Yeah, I mean, there's a toss-up, isn't there? Because if you're staying up late, then you're losing the quantity if you wake up at your normal time. So there's a way up between the two. But in my opinion, if getting up on the weekend should be combined with going to bed at the same time. There's no point sticking to waking up at the same time if actually you go to bed at 10 o'clock Monday to Thursday, but on Friday and Saturday you go to bed at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
That's not routine. That's one part of the routine. It's not both. So yeah, the routine should be the going to bed as well as the waking up in the morning where possible anyway. And it'll just give your body the best chance to get an effective night's sleep. And the last one is probably the most important one that I had myself, and that's it's the ability to shut down.
Okay.
So your body doesn't want to be going to bed when it's really stressed out with thoughts racing through the mind, and this is probably one of the most common one of people. The feelings they express to me is that I can't shut my mind off when I'm going to sleep, and that's why they can't get a good night's sleep. So there's a few ways to go about it. It sounds a bit namby-pamby, but I'm a big fan of meditation. It's it gets a bit of it gets written off as something hippies do, or it's not for strength athletes. That was the sort of feedback I had. But actually, maybe it should be, because it's a good way to shut up before bed. But it doesn't have to be meditation. That's a very fixed way of doing it. The one I chose myself that helped me massively was, and it's good not just for sleep, to be fair, it's just good for life in general. And that is, I write down my thoughts before bed and I plan the next day. It's good just because you plan the next day, so you're not going to bed worrying about how you're going to attack the things you need to. You're literally it's already all ready to go. The plan's in place. It's just waiting. It's just a good night's. It's just some sleep you need before that, and then you're gonna smash it. It's already outlined. Because I don't know about you, but everything always seems less daunting when there's a plan to it.
Definitely.
So for me, I had so much going on when I was working 2 jobs, long commute. I had a house renovations going on when I was actually writing my research on sleep, and that's actually when I started implementing it before bed. And all of a sudden, everything seemed a lot more achievable when I wrote it down before bed, and that's what helped me shut down. So I call that the brain dump, and that one's really, really important for me, and I still do it.
I like that.
But that could be anything. It could be just jogging your thoughts down. If you're having a notepad next to the bed and just scribbling it down if you remember something, or just, you know, or wrapping up things before bed. So like, you know, if you've got an open communication, shut it down before bed so you're not anticipating a response whilst you're asleep.
Yeah,
you know, shut things down. That helps. And the last one, I call it the individual stuff. So sometimes it's really simple stuff that keeps people up, like a barking dog next door, or a partner that snores, or it's, you know, that you leave the window open but you live next to a council yard, and they drive the bin lorries out of there every morning at a certain time, and you don't realize it, but you wake up just after they've been past because they've made enough noise to make you sleep a bit lighter. Then all of a sudden you'll wake up and you can't hear them anymore, but actually that's what was waking you up. So identifying the individual stuff actually becomes the person's responsibility usually. And there's things you can learn from experience, but I found that actually the only person that can identify those things is the person themselves. Yeah. So a big one for me was actually I mouth breathe when I sleep, and I wake up because my mouth goes dry, and that's not in any of the literature really. It's only started to come out recently, and there's a thing called mouth taping, which is the extreme thing, which is actually where people tape their mouth shut when they go to sleep.
Yeah, it's becoming more popular, I think.
I sound weird, and I often don't mention it, but I feel like we've gone into quite a bit of science today, so I feel like the people that listen to this are going to be a little bit more into it. For me, it made the biggest difference ever to my sleep.
Really?
The only problem is despite having a massive nose like this, even when I take my mouth shut, sometimes I can't breathe through my nose. Right, so, okay. And this always gets a good laugh when I do workshops, and that is I take my mouth shut, I jam a nasal dilator up my nose, and I would wear blue light glasses as well. So you can imagine if I had my way, I'd have these big orange specs on, these things round at my nose, my mouth taped shut. It's a good job we've got kids already, eh?
That's it. Say goodbye to your sex life.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you actually. I had that in mind. I thought we won't touch on it, but as you mentioned it about the nasal dilation, I've used nasal strips.
Yeah, same thing.
And obviously, some people say there's no benefit. Other people say it's incredible. I've found as soon as I put it on, I could breathe better through my nose, and did wake up, not every night, but I find I use them periodically, and I tend to wake up feeling very refreshed the next day.
Yeah, and this is what we talked about earlier, is you figured that out for yourself. You know, you've used them and it made you feel better. So who actually cares what the research is? You've tried something and it worked for you, it made you feel better. So, you know, so try it. A big thing with a lot of the stuff they've done on people trying things for sleep is they'll change the one thing, but you know, if you're still necking espressos in bed, it doesn't matter what you put on your nose, you're not getting a good night's sleep. It's simple as that. You know, it really is that simple. Like, we're talking about quite small things now, but you know, I'm already doing the big rocks that make a big difference. And as such, like, you know, I when I do make these small things, they do make a big difference.
And I guess if we're talking about, say, athletic populations who are trying to optimize and get those 1-2%, and they're already doing big stuff, these little issues, these little things can make quite a difference, can't they?
Yeah, this is it. And and that's the thing. There's a big difference between working with people that just don't sleep that well, of the general population, and athletes that are trying to sleep a lot better. But there's actually a lot of research suggests that athletes don't sleep that well anyway, as a result of this, as a result of their sport or their training, etc. And actually, a lot of the stuff they need to be doing is the big rocks, because it's what they're not doing.
I could definitely
I
agree.
think
Yeah, I'd say I'm probably sleeping better now I'm not doing jiu-jitsu than I would usually, because jiu-jitsu classes are generally in the evening. You get home, eat, sit and chat to the wife for half an hour, and then go to bed. And oftentimes your body's so
you're pumped, your cortisol's high.
Yeah, it's super hard to get to sleep.
Yeah, that's quite a common one as well. That is something that affects sleep. I wouldn't call it a massive rock, because your body does tend to get used to what it's doing if you train in the evening a lot. But yeah, if every time you exercise, obviously there's a spike in cortisol, which isn't conducive to getting straight to sleep. Essentially, it's adrenaline and stuff running through you. So yeah, that is something as well. I think like one thing I always mention as well, because usually when I do this, I've got slides and they jog my memory on as to what I'm doing. And the big thing about sleep is when I open a Q&A out afterwards, and I always, when I first did it, I got the same questions like, I've got kids, what I can't do these things you're mentioning because I'm only getting 4 hours sleep a night, and this is what I'm on about. That's fine. You can't do anything about that, but you can control the things you can control. So, and everyone always said to me, like, oh, you've got a baby on the way, I can't wait to see what your sleep's like. Well, it's still pretty good, to be fair. And the reason being is, even though I'm getting less sleep, everything I can control, the caffeine, the screen time, the mouth breathing, I am controlling that. So as a result, when I'm getting my 5 hours sleep, for me, it's an effective 5 hours. I got up at just before 5 this morning, and I'm still feeling great. And that's because I got a good night's sleep before. And had I had loads of coffee before I went to bed, phone in, and had I run 5 hours, I don't guess that I wouldn't hesitate to guess that I wouldn't feel as good right now. Yeah. So for me, it's control the things you can control. If you can only get a block of 4 hours, then why not control the things that you feel you can control in order to make that 4 hours the most effective 4 hours you can get? Because actually, it's sometimes worn as a badge of honor. Like, I only got 4 hours sleep last night. I'm well hard. But actually, research suggests that that's not going to make you well hard. It shouldn't be a badge of honor. It's going to make you tired, grumpy, and less strong in the long run. So
I have been to jiu-jitsu when my boys, first boy Ruben, sleep has always been very poor, and definitely going to jiu-jitsu after a very, very poor night's sleep, you are not well hard, and you're being turned over by people that you would usually turn over. So, but I think what I would say to people in who say, oh, I can't do X, Y, and Z because my kids don't sleep, you need to address the child's sleep. The child's not going to do it. They're not going to be taping their mouth and buying blackout blinds. That's your job. So you need to start addressing the child's sleep. And I've been there, and I can say that from experience. And I've had a coach tell me that and thought, you don't understand, you have kids. It's harder than that. But realistically, we just need to take responsibility. And when we started addressing the child's sleep, things got much better.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's a lot about understanding the principles of some of the stuff we talked about, the light exposure and the stimulation before bed. So, for instance, if you let a kid play video games in the hours before bed, they played a stimulating game with blue light, keeping them up. It's not a wonder they don't want to go to sleep. And then, I'm not tired. Yeah, well, probably because you've been playing thingy. The problem is it's quite hard. People take it very personally when you talk about their kids.
Yeah.
So I usually wait for the second or third consult to have that conversation. If we are going down there, because people get really defensive. Well, you don't know. Well, I do know a little bit now, and I'm starting to have the experience. But it doesn't. Yeah, you can control the things you can control. You can't control some things, but if you look at yourself, take a long hard look. I think most people realize there's a lot of things they're thinking they can't control, which they actually can. Yeah. And what you get a lot of the time is, I'm just not a good sleeper. And to me, all I hear there is, I'm probably doing something I shouldn't be.
Yeah. Man, we've covered.
We waffled, didn't we?
So much stuff to do with sleep. It was really good, actually. That's pretty much exactly as I hoped it would go today. I know that there's going to be like a ton of actionable stuff that people are going to be able to take away from this. And I know every time I listen to something about sleep or read a book about sleep, my sleep probably improves like, 5% after that, because there's a few little things that I've been able to action. So I really hope people listening today or watching today can take away some bits and put them into their routine. If people want to kind of get hold of you, work with you, have a sleep consult, or just chat to you about things, how can they get hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm quite lucky that I've got a unique name. So all my social media handles are at Chris Bundell. So my Facebook, my Instagram, I have a Twitter, although I tend to just stalk other people on Twitter. I just tend to stalk academics on Twitter mostly, and get free research papers on there. I have a website, chrisbundell.co.uk. It's just a little bit about myself. I don't officially function as a sleep consultant. I just sort of becomes an area when people are coming to me as part of my S&C usually. And then likewise, they can, through SC Vital Fitness, that's the same on Instagram and Facebook, which is SC Vital Fitness. I'm the head coach there, and we've got a great team of coaches, and I've done a lot of work with them on how they can help others as well, and it's just all part of the package we offer.
Brilliant. Yeah, go and check those guys out on Facebook and Instagram, because they put up loads of good content about all sorts of stuff.
And add yourself as well, Henry.
Thank you. But yeah, thanks for coming on today, Chris. It was great to have you. Hopefully we'll be able to chat again about S&C and all the other.
Yeah, definitely.
You're so good at.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
All right, so that was a real pleasure to have Chris on, talking about a subject that he knows well, a subject that's really important to everyone. But, whether you train or don't train, optimizing your sleep or improving the quality and quantity of your sleep is really going to have a knock-on effect on so many areas of your life, health and performance. So, hopefully there are some takeaways that you can take from that to help improve your sleep. And I thought some of the kind of myth busting that Chris did about, how much sleep you actually need and different aspects like that was really interesting. So, hopefully this is going to take your kind of sleep hygiene to the next level. And if you like the show, then please comment, share and like, because it helps us to make more great content like this. We got some more really exciting interviews coming up about subjects such as hydration and nutrition, with some really great guests from different areas around the world. So I'm really excited to share that with you. I hope you enjoyed today, and we'll see you next time.